up, and with me as always is Les Elder. Les, what did you do when you didn't have me to talk about with all of this news that's been dropping?
I still talk to you. It just wasn't on the podcast. I just talked to you in the WhatsApp chat. So you can't actually say that we had a week off because we were still picking things apart. And the rugby world thought that they would throw a whole heap of news at us in a week's time. So as always, our WhatsApp chat was pinging off, and our roundtable WhatsApp chat that we now have with the ladies that have been on this podcast with us, Christina Sue, Chelsea Semple, and Taylor Johnson. So, yeah, while I didn't see you on the potty, we were talking every day on the WhatsApp.
We're never far away because, goodness sake, how much news? I mean, the first thing, obviously, was Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe came out of retirement. So, hooray! The Please Don't Leave Us propaganda worked. We're so pleased to have her back.
Yes, so happy about that one. We were buzzing on that news. I think the whole world was actually. So, yes, Great start to the announcements of the week.
It was. And then, of course, we had that quickly followed by the announcement of the Black Ferns first camp. Now, this was interesting because this is actually the first time we've had a public announcement of a camp list. Like, obviously, over the years, there is a longer list of players that come in and out of that environment, but a lot of the time we don't get visibility to that. So in order to have that kind of peek behind the curtain, that was really interesting, right, Les, to see that type of change?
It was, and I hope it's something we see a bit more of. I really like this. So to the ladies and men and whoever involved at New Zealand Rugby who announced that, can we please keep having that? Because it just gives us those touch points and it gets the conversation flowing. It definitely created good conversation for us.
Absolutely. I think for me, it was more of the fan in mind, right? Because we're taking us on that jersey. We're seeing the big number getting whittled down again. So then, of course, again, in this 1 week off, we had the announcement of this big squad and then the smaller one. So who it is that the Black Ferns will be taking to the Pacific Force series. And we have to say, for us, there wasn't necessarily as many, big surprises in there. I got so many DMs about Ruby Tui, which I understand. But to be honest with you, team, that told me more about how little women's rugby you've watched since the last World Cup.
Yeah, and I think even some of the media that was going around, I watched an interview where someone said, you haven't picked Ruby Tui, why not? And I thought, wow, firstly, that was quite a direct and blunt question. But I did think to myself, a lot of the selections I kind of anticipated. We actually talked about that on the podcast before the announcement was made. So there weren't as big a surprises, I guess, for me and you, or the surprises didn't align with the media headlines. I think my biggest surprise was the Luca Connor, Renee Holmes omission, and probably not so much the Ruby Tui and Chelsea Bremner, which they are the names that seem to be popping up all over the media in the last week.
It's also interesting though, right? Because I think with all of these, it's the question of when is the door closed? Because while we all know there is a very short runway before this Black Ferns World Cup defence takes off, we do still have a little bit to go. So as much as there is, this Pacific Force series, I would think someone like Chelsea Bremner, she won't be going, oh, well, I'm going to go white baiting like Stephen Donald did in 2011. I think she's probably going to keep fit, right? And you're not going to see Luca Connor in the stands like we did Aaron Cruden getting on the piss and then next week he was out in the middle. Like, these women are going to stay ready. So I would say, and I know, full disclosure, I texted a couple of them and they're all like, yeah, we're still in the hiss, absolutely. So none of them will be writing themselves off yet, and neither should we, right?
No way. I would not be writing myself at all, because I think for some of these selections, it definitely is just about seeing people at this level. I really believe that. Like Dice Faleafanga, they need to see her play. And because they need to see her play, lock Lucy, whatever it is, she could probably cover the wing, like Chelsea Semple said a couple of weeks ago. Because they need to see her play, there's a lock that's gonna miss out, right? And unfortunately, that was Chelsea Bremner.
And when it comes to someone like Chelsea, that's because we know exactly what she can do. So whereas some of the other players, we might be needing to hold them up to be, doing a this or that, I think this is very much this is the moment for you. or it will be that. So it's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks. But of course, we are effectively in season 2 now of Full Credit, because we had that reset, because we've got a whole new tournament to be taking you through. And that is, of course, the Pacific 4 series. And so I have done what I do best, which is got really nerdy on a bunch of history, because my goodness team, if there's one thing I love the most, it's women's rugby history. So let me share some with you on the origins of this tournament. Because what I can tell you is, although we might think of Pacific 4 as being relatively new, the origins of this are kind of all the way back from where we first took our name. So the Black Ferns, obviously, they were named the Black Ferns back in 1998 at that World Cup. And it was in 1999, the year following, that we had our first kind of Tri-Nation series. And that Tri-Nation setup was New Zealand, Canada, and the USA. And of course, at that time, New Zealand and USA had just played in the World Cup final the year before. So this was big stake stuff, coming and playing in where else but Palmerston North.
Yes, and we would love that.
The hub of everything. So look, that was the first one that kicked off there. And then we kind of have seen different iterations over this over the years. So in the year 2000, England came and joined the party and played alongside those three. 2001, it disappeared. We didn't have anything going on. We played I think a World 15 or something that year. And then in 2002, we had a World Cup to get busy with. In 2004, it returned again. Hooray! And at that point, we had kind of the 4 in the mix playing again there. 2005, USA disappeared. Okay, sorry guys, we'll see you later. And we ended up playing Canada twice and Scotland as well, because that was the reshuffle we went with at that time. In 2006, another World Cup. And another World Cup victory for us, by the way. That was a three-peat at that point, so humble brag. Okay, then in 2007 to 2008, we only played Australia. Okay, that was a choice, an interesting one, but there we go. In 2009, we took a trip to England, and so we were playing over there. In 2010, we had another World Cup, and what else did we have? Another victory. So that was our four-peat. And I just want to say there, I saw something in the news last week about John Mitchell trying to say that all the pressure was on the Black Ferns coming into this World Cup because we're chasing a three-peat. And I was like, mate, we've already done it. Get out.
Know your history. Learn your history.
Anyway, so, okay, where am I up to? 2010, another victory, beautiful, where Anna Richards was 45 and steering the tiller for New Zealand at number 10. How unreal. And who else was on the field at that time? Kelly Brazier. Anyway, we're going to 2011 to 2013. Well, we only play England now for some reason. This is according to the New Zealand Rugby records during this period. So is it any wonder then that 2014 was the disaster it was? Because we only got to play one other team during that period. And yeah, we don't like to remember what happened in 2014. Fast forward to 2015. And a young Leslie Ann makes her debut. Yeah. Makes her debut. And what was essentially really now, we're getting very close to this final form of this Pacific Four. This was what we called at the time the Super Series. Now, this was a rehash of that original, but this time it featured England, USA, and Canada. And that was the place that you made your debut, wasn't it?
It was, yes, against Canada, actually. It was a real cool tournament. And I could go on about that being probably one of two of my favourite tours of all time. Obviously, debut season, they're always pretty special. But I think that year we had 12 debutants in the team. It was a really cool trip. And we won. Yay!
Even better. So, okay, 2016, we had Australia that we played, and we went on a Northern tour. So we didn't have a kind of Super Series happening then. But then in 2018, USA came back in the mix and we got to play them again. They came to New Zealand and we also play Australia. And then we went on that end-of-year Tour de France. And actually, I was in France in 2018 because I was living and playing rugby over in England at the time. So I thought, I'm going to pop over to Grenoble and go and watch you all there. And obviously not such a great result for New Zealand, but I remember at the time sitting in that stand and it was packed to the rafters. There was 18,000 people there. And I have to say, the French fans were very respectful and kind to me when I was singing very poorly the New Zealand anthem at the beginning of the game, they gave me a polite round of applause for giving it my best.
It's funny you say that because I had the complete opposite experience in 2018. So 2018, there were 2 games against France. We won the first one. We lost the second one. In the first game, I got concussed, and so I was ruled out of the second game. And so I was standing in the non-strip seats in the stands, and we were all lined up in the stands here, right in front of a whole group of. Well, we were in the stands amongst the French supporters. Every time they scored, they would grab us and shake us, and it got to a point where I was like, "Can you stop touching me?"
I also have to say, though, shout out to the Black Ferns, because that's how I got home, because I was trying to buy a train ticket the next day, and the train, if you've ever gone around France, I can tell you is that they won't speak English, and fair play to them. Why would they? They're French, they're in France. But they also will tell you that they can't when they actually can. So I was trying to buy a ticket from the conductor man, and he didn't speak a word of English until he clocked that my accent was a New Zealand one. And then he said, "Oh, rugby?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, you lose, so sad." And then sold me my ticket home.
He just learnt those words and just had to tell you those.
Yeah. His French pride allowed him to speak English, but only to sledge me about rugby, which could not be more French. Anyway, so yeah, not a great result for us there, but I at the time thought, I will never see a crowd like this for women's rugby again.
Special.
And boy, was I wrong, because then we got to experience it ourselves here a couple of years later. But where are we in terms of Pacific Four and Super Series? Well, I can tell you that in 2019, the Super Series is back. And so now it is England, France, USA, and Canada. That is like the creme de la creme. That must have been intense and amazing to play in, right, Liz?
England, France, USA, Canada, us. Yes, that was. I thought that was probably one of the better setups. And obviously because you're playing not just USA and Canada, who we play now in Pac 4, but you're playing two of the other best in the world in France and England, which have a different style of play again. That was a real cool series. We also won that one, but we went down to France again. So that was kind of the start of a bit of France kind of became our voodoo team a little bit. We lost to them 2018, 2019. COVID hit us 2020, but 2021 again we lost them twice. So they did become a bit of our voodoo team, definitely a team that put us on notice. But we ended up winning that series because they went down to England and we beat England.
Now, it's interesting because as much as that was like a precursor of Pacific Four, it was also a sign of kind of WXV to come, because that lineup, those teams involved, was pretty close to what WXV 1 was in its first iteration. But anyway, 2020, obviously the world is kind of on hold that year because that's when COVID ripped through, and so international fixtures just couldn't be a thing. But in 2022 is when actually Pacific Four officially launched. 2021. Sorry, where am I up to? 2021 is when Pacific Four actually launched. And we were due. Now, because this is the kind of asterisk to put on things. People talk about it starting in 2022. That is true in terms of everyone's participation, but it actually had its soft launch the year before. And it was a 2-match series that was played between USA and Canada. We were supposed to feature in that alongside Australia, but obviously the COVID conditions of it all got too complicated to navigate. So at that time, like I say, 2-match series between those two, and Canada came out on top. And so actually Canada won the inaugural version of the Pacific Four series. 2022 though comes to New Zealand, and this was the kind of warm-up actually to kind of test a lot of our logistics when it came to the World Cup, because we were hosting everyone and trying to build a bunch of energy around what was to come, and we did do well at that one, thankfully. So the first one with everyone in, New Zealand wins, hooray. And I watched a very soggy game in Whakatane, I believe. Oh my gosh.
That was in Tauranga.
Oh, Tauranga. I'd been in Whakatane that week, but yes, I've never been more soggy in my life. God bless the man next to me with the umbrella that he shared.
That was my first proper opportunity as a commentator, so I actually missed out on that selection for that Pac 4 in 2022. And Spark Sport, Randall Munro, great man, gave me my first gig as a commentator. And I got thrown in the deep end, literally got given the mic, headset, this little shelter that covered my hair, and was asked to sideline commentate that. Never done it before, with Christina Sue and Scotty Stevenson. So that was a cool opportunity and kickstarted a bit of a side gig that I do at the moment.
Oh, side gig. I think it's probably the whole, next chapter, isn't it? We never leave rugby. We just change the form of our relationship. Okay, so 2023, we play again and, we win again. Hooray! But then in 2024, Canada.
And this is where it gets juicy.
Oh my gosh, this is where it starts getting really juicy, because it was Canada. And yes, I am wearing a Canada shirt. If you are watching this on the YouTube, Gabby Sepp gave this to me, and it's cool because it's the only time I'd seen anyone put anything out that was like pride related for their rugby nation. So yeah, I wear this.
Cool.
But yes, they played us and they played us.
Yeah.
And they got out on top, and full credit to them.
100%. I mean, I think they stamped their foot in the women's rugby, like, take us seriously grounds, and at the Rugby World Cup here in New Zealand, when they made it to the semi-finals and gave England a run for their money. But then to back that up last year and to beat New Zealand for the first time ever.
Yes.
For the first time ever. It kind of was, it made us all go, holy heck. And this is a team that's not professional. Mm-hmm. They're fundraising right now to make it to World Cup.
I mean, yes, and so if you can give a little, give some. I believe they're halfway to that total now. But it was interesting because I do remember I met lovely Sophie de Goody's mum the eve of like World Cup action, and she was cornering me and saying she's felt really fed up when she came to New Zealand and was reading the coverage, and she was like, nobody is talking about us. Everyone talks about England, everyone talks about New Zealand, everyone talks about France, but nobody talks about Canada, despite the fact that Canada is a regular feature in semi-finals in the women's game. They are a regular, consistent performer, and we always kind of go, oh yeah. But then, as much as we all remember the semi-final between New Zealand and France and how tight that was, we got to be honest, that England-Canada semi-final was right on a knife edge too, and had a couple of bounces of the ball gone the other way, it could have been, the upset of all upsets. So I just think it's so interesting, having watched the way that Canada has built, having watched the way that they have done things completely differently in terms of, like we're saying, the contracting situation and how that currently operates, the way that they work a one high-performance unit, have all 7s and 15s in together. So many things they're doing differently that are paying off for them. And so exciting now to have number 2 and 3 in this tournament. World number 2 and 3 in this tournament. Number 2 being Canada currently. Number 3 being us. Number 9, I think, is currently USA. And number 6, I think. 6 for Australia?
I think so.
Sorry, guys, if you're number 5, I might be naughty.
I definitely know that USA are ranked number 9. And that's why with Pac 4 2025 kicking off this weekend, yesterday, USA versus Canada, it was pretty cool to see USA ranked number 9 give Canada, ranked number 2, a really good run for their money.
Yeah, and it was another a very interesting game. These two teams have, such a storied rivalry. It goes all the way back, to the 1980s when both kind of programs were getting up and running, finding their feet internationally. Of course, you're going to end up playing your neighbours the most, and there's no love lost between those matches. And it was definitely the same when you watched the game yesterday. There was a lot of fight going on in those contacts. It was right there. I thought defensively, USA, it's one of the better defensive games I've seen them play, and Canada uncharacteristically making some mistakes. And so is that a case of first game of the season, or is that related to USA's fierce defense? Could be a combination of both.
Yeah, I actually thought so. I kind of thought that over the years USA have kind of dropped in somewhat in level, especially since 2019. I remember playing them. They were big, they were physical. They had a lot of 7s girls coming over. I think Tapper was one that, frequently was chopping and changing. And then kind of World Cup happened. They were not too bad, and then it's kind of dropped a little bit. So to see them put in the performance, like I seen a massive improvement in their performance yesterday. Yes, it was a bit messy, but man, did they compete. And really cool too to see there are a number of girls in both sides that have featured here in New Zealand, either in Super Rugby Opaki or in our provincial competition, the Wharapama Cup. So that was cool as well.
Definitely. Like Talia Brodie, who had played for the Tasman Muckall before. She had a great game.
And the Volcanics. She was with the Volcanics too.
Oh, there you go. And Rory Wood is another one who we've had. And obviously Shoshana, who just featured as part of the Chiefs Manawa this year.
And Rachel Smith, the lock, she played her for the Volcanics as well. So a lot of them come over and play for the Mount Marlins club here in the Mount. And then, got represented in the Volcanics as well, which is cool.
It is very cool. But yes, fantastic to see them play. Also, Canada, though, ultimately grounded out. Their rolling mauls keep mauling forever. They love it. But what was interesting to see is they've obviously put quite a few slip variations on that. Now, that was the most jargony sentence I've maybe ever uttered on this podcast. So a maul is one of those big pushy hugs they do when they throw the ball in from the sideline and then all the forwards team up together and then do a big push. That's a maul, or otherwise known as a drive. I remember once being at a Pride training and a ref had come in to explain us the rules around various things. It was kind of like, ask me anything with a ref. And the ref had given us a full briefing on what a maul was. And then they said, does anyone have any questions? And someone put up their hand and said, what about a drive?
Same, babes.
Same thing. Anyway, so that's the big pushy hub. Now, when I talk about slips, what I'm saying there is normally what happens is you bring the ball down, you set up, and you push from there. What we saw them do quite a lot yesterday was that they brought the ball down, and rather than set up there, they slipped the pass off, or someone peeled off the back and went again. Now, they did that kind of a couple of times. Off the back of the line out, they had maybe 1-2 slips out, which was just interesting to see that they're obviously like, well, everyone's onto us with the maul, so how can we add another dimension to it?
Some variety.
Right? Keep people guessing. So that's going to be interesting to keep eyes on, particularly for me, because I love mauls. Justice for mauls. Everyone hates them.
Mauls done well are really good and they're effective. We know how effective they are. And there are some teams that lean on them a little bit more than others. But I guess for the fan engagement, you want to see a little bit more than a driving maul. But the technicality of a driving maul is hard to defend and to execute. So when you can appreciate that, then you can appreciate the skill level when a team does nail it time and time again.
And likewise, when you see one defended well, because it's so hard to do, when you see someone manage to work their way through that knot of bodies through to the back and latch on, I adore seeing something like that.
But you know what? We are in the Southern Hemisphere. This is not a Northern Hemisphere podcast. We're not talking about mauls any longer. Let's move on.
Fair enough, because the other big piece of news, obviously, that dropped this week was the confirmation of the final coach that was making up the lineup of the Black Ferns team. And that was Ricky Flutie, who has joined the Black Ferns setup as the backs and skills coach. Now, the thing that became very apparent to everyone that loves women's rugby when we were looking at this lineup is, okay, so we've now got 5 blokes in charge of the Black Ferns team. And you have to then ask the question, where are the women? Were you asking that, Liz?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess not only am I asking that, but I'm repeating questions from a few years ago where I was saying, what is the plan to bring more high-performance female coaches through our national programs? And yeah, I guess a couple of opportunities have been missed. There's some things that happened in 2022 in terms of a coaching apprenticeship that was granted to Whitney Hansen, 2021 actually, where she got to spend a significant amount of time with the Black Ferns, went on tours with them, was pretty much another coach to the coaching setup. And what a great experience that would have been for her, but an experience that hasn't been offered again since 2021. So, when you're losing when Whitney Hansen's not involved in the Black Ferns setup since 2022, what are the plans being to get more women involved, or even just expose women to that level? And unfortunately, and we'll talk about this soon, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like there has been a lot of opportunity for our female high performance coaches.
So rather than, just be stabbing around in the dark, we did put those questions direct to New Zealand Rugby, because, the first question you ask is, okay, so we're seeing all men appointed. What is the process? What is the process behind this? Because we need to know that. Is this, a case of shoulder tapping, which it has been in the past, or was there an expression of interest that was available, and so was it a case of people needing to put themselves forward? So what we can tell you is that there was an expression of interest that was circulated. And so we asked that question. With this, where did it go? Who, what was the interview, was the process and all of that, and who kind of got involved? So the answer that we had back from New Zealand Rugby on this, specifically in relation to where did the posting go out to, was their answer. I'm just going to read it verbatim here. The process was transparent, inclusive, and consistent with our normal standard practice for coaching and management replacement appointments. The EOI was circulated to more than 80 different parties across New Zealand Rugby's coaching and coach support network at Super Rugby Aupiki, Super Rugby Pacific, and provincial union level across both men's and women's networks. It was also shared with the Black Ferns Hub network. So I asked a follow-up question at the time in relation to that, which was, if it was sent to a specific group, were there any women on that list? And my answer that I got back to that was, see above. So already getting a little bit vague in terms of, this list that we've laid out here around, we've sent it to, coaching networks and whatever. I know there's a lot of men that sit within that. And I know currently that a lot of our women, and particularly our aspiring and developing women, don't actually work in rugby as their job. They come in for contracts, obviously. I'm thinking specifically around our Super Rugby Aupiki coaches. A lot of them still have regular jobs, just like our players do. The seasons aren't long enough, so a lot of them are only in there, just like players, for those short stints, and in the meantime, they go back to their community and to their mahi that they're otherwise doing. So that's important to note, because immediately there, I'm seeing a structural issue, which is, okay, you might be doing what you're seeing as the right thing. We're sending it out to all of our official channels. But the problem with this is that if we don't exist within that, already step one, I can see we've inadvertently potentially not reached some of the people that we really should be trying to pull in here.
100%. Like when you hear about, so they've sent it to Aupiki, FPC, hubs. I mean, if a lot of our female coaches are working in hubs, then they may get that. If they're working for franchises like the Blues, Chiefs, Poa and Matatu, then they might have got that. But if they're not in those frameworks, if they're not in those systems, are they getting it, is the next question.
Yes, and the other question is the timing around this too, because you might send it to that list. Let's also talk about when we are assembled within those spaces, because for Aupiki, that's kind of only happening from November, but formally really from February. So when did this posting come out in terms of when you're in position? And likewise, PUs, well, our coaching teams, that's wrapped up by September. So again, if this happened after September, is that going to touch current FPC coaches? Like, these are questions that we need to really be thinking about around who it is we're looking to target. So again, rather than just make guesses at this stuff, we instead sat down between Les and I, and we're like, look, we know a bunch of coaches. We know the people that we think should have been, in the mix of these conversations. So let's just contact 10 of them that we can think of off the top of our head and ask the question. It's a pretty simple one. Did you see the posting? Like, did you know about it? And that's all we wanted to know. Did you know about it? Yes or no? We didn't even get into the details of did you apply and what have you. We didn't need to know that detail. We just wanted to know, are people seeing it? And so what we can tell you is, of those 10 women we asked, 8 of them, the answer was no. The 2 that said yes are those that are right within system. So are those that are on the payroll, really, right the way in. But 8 out of the 10 that you and I can sit down real quick and come up with off the top of our head, not getting that, that speaks volumes, doesn't it, Les?
It speaks volumes, and it pisses me off, because These are women that should be identified. We have talent ID and we have depth charts for players. Yes, they need to be improved. That's a whole nother podcast. But why don't we have the same for our high performance female coaches, where we can go, here is the group. I already set up in an email group or a WhatsApp chat or whatever. I'm going to post this to them straight away. They should have been the first to know about it, in my opinion. Like, how are we ever going to grow our female high performance coaches if we're not even giving them directed communication about the opportunities that are available to them? Like, these ladies, to me, should be the first to get this news. They should be front of mind for anyone that's developing high performance female coaches. And if that's our aspiration, if our strategy at New Zealand Rugby is to grow more female high performance coaches, then that should just be an easy system already in place. So is it our strategy?
I was going to say, I asked the question of, is that our goal? Because is it? Like, is it our goal to have women leading our women high performance teams? Because if it is, where are the numbers and the metrics around that? I mean, I went on the news a couple years back when Bunce got appointed as the head coach, right? And I said at the time, I can understand why he did, because we haven't necessarily invested as we needed to be able to lift other women up, to be able to compete against him on his CV. And what I said at the time was, but the way to change that is to make direct intervention. And one of the things I floated at the time was making a mandatory, like, cross the board by an end of next World Cup, 100% women head coaches in the Wharapama Cup. You have to do something like that. It has to be as visible like that in order to show women that there is a space. We saw this in governance too. Shit was never going to change in New Zealand rugby governance until they were forced to by the New Zealand government. And even then, we dragged our feet and we were the last to comply. Out of all of the sports in this country, we were the last to do it, and we were fined because we didn't hit it on time. So these are the things. There is still such a rigidity around who it is actually that gets to lead within our sport. Because if you look at the numbers, because you know I love a spreadsheet, I've been tracking any woman I can see that is stepping in Wharapama Cup or higher over the last couple of years. There's been 30 women across the board, but the majority of them, where do they sit? They sit as assistants. We're always an assistant, never a head. And if you're only an assistant in the women's game, boy, howdy is it hard to climb from there. Because the other thing is, we talk all the time about how our short seasons put a handbrake on development in terms of players. The same is true for women. If you are coaches, because if you are dedicating yourself as a coach, but you're only doing Super Rugby Aupiki, that's a little window of time to develop your skill set. So what are we doing about matching that and lifting that up? I heard Bunce speak at the time, back when he was appointed, talking about how men's rugby needed to be opening doors to welcome women's rugby into that spaces to help uplift those coaches too. I've heard anecdotally from various coaches that they have kind of managed to wheedle their way in places, and that's taken a lot of self-motivation and determination and sourcing out those ideas. We've seen that in terms of our player pool. In terms of our coaching pool, I'm thinking Linda Itinu, who's over in Japan, Jana Vaughan, who's there too, Crystal Kowa, who's gone to Brazil, beat bloody Australia, for goodness sake, with that team. Like, our women go and they grow, but why can't they do it here?
100%. And I was just going to say, like, what to one of your questions there was, the women are doing the work. Like, they're hunting for opportunities for themselves, and that's why they are going overseas. And for some of them, they're taking their whole families. Like, they are doing the work. They're making the ultimate sacrifices to grow themselves as coaches. But what do we have back here? Like, Crystal Koa comes home. Does she know that there is an opportunity, a real opportunity for her back here? Does she know that? I'm not too sure. I think to myself, 2022, Whitney Hansen was the last female in the Black Ferns environment. She was given an internship, I think, through World Rugby. I could be wrong here.
It
World
was.
Rugby. And she was pretty much resourced and paid as another coach of the Black Ferns setup. So epic, unreal opportunity for her. And look at her now. Like, she's doing amazing. And I don't think her time in the Black Ferns environment is at an end. I think she'll be back in there at some point when she's ready. But 2023, 2024, we're now 2025. So potentially 3 years there where we could have had 3 more internships if not funded by World Rugby, then why aren't we just doing it ourselves? Like, why is that just not budgeted in? That's 3 more coaches that we could have given that world-class experience. That's, they are brought in and paid as a full-time coach, given whatever role that they are given, but they get to see team selections, they get to see planning, everything, review processes, all that sort of stuff. Experience that you can't get anywhere else, right? We could have developed 3 more by having a very similar setup to what at Whitney Henson. And that's just a brief idea. I'm just chucking out one random idea there. More detailed thinking around this, you could do a lot more. But we've done nothing.
The other one that I had on the list, which again I put to New Zealand Rugby about in one of my questions because I raised, like you did, the internship scheme and how that has fallen away. The other thing I talked about was the repurposing of Ako Wahine. Ako Wahine was a fantastic program which was about identifying this part, the high performance, the ones that want to ascend. We had them come in and identify coaches and start bringing them together. Well, that's your comms list right there. Why isn't there an email list sent, through, particularly to those women that were supported through the Ako Wahine program to get their, level 3s? Or was it level 4? Yeah, level 3s, right? So that they can be certified there too. So not only have you already assembled this group, not only have you already ushered them through the badges, and then we just forgot about them. Why did we forget? Because we took this program that was fantastic and we repurposed it into something that already existed. Had to edit myself there because I wanted to say the F word. Something that already existed, which is 101 coaching spaces for women. Like, I get it. I want to encourage more women in the first ever time to be stepping into club spaces, to be leading. Don't get me wrong. That needs to happen. It already was, though.
Yeah.
We are so good at pulling people into step 1, but we never think about 2, 3, 4, because you know why? Because that's as soon as we start getting into politics, baby, and we don't want to touch that. We just want to get the numbers through so we can say we've trained X amount of women. I feel deeply cynical on this point, but there's a reason I do, because when I asked again this specifically, I said, is there any further plans around targeted development of high-performance women coaches? Conscious we don't have an internship within the Black Ferns group like we did in the lead-up to the last World Cup, and that the Ako Wahine program, which used to occupy this space, has been repurposed instead to target those at the beginning of their journey. And this was the response I had back. Again, I'm going to read verbatim here. New Zealand Rugby's high-performance coaching team supports our high-potential coaches and is committed to expanding the number and quality of coaches in the men's and women's game. Didn't ask about men. Anyway, continuing with their answer. Our coaching support team has grown from 2 to 4 roles in 2025, with a specific focus on increasing opportunities across the game. There has been an intentional focus on women's high-performance pathway in 2025, seeing increased opportunities for players, coaches and staff, alongside the domestic competitions of the Wharapama Cup. I'm not going to drop the sponsor that they did in there. And the Super Rugby Okiriki. There will be further opportunities for coaches at under 18, under 20 girls, under 18 sevens, Black Ferns development, and Black Ferns 15s in 2025. So what they've basically said is their strategy is having more teams. That's their strategy for high performance women, is have more women's teams within high performance. Okay. But I just want to note as well that when we were having that conversation with that group of 10 coaches, and this was a little bit of an alarm bell to me, when we were having that conversation with those 10 coaches, hey, did you see that listing? And they said no. A couple of them did, though, come back and say, but I did see the Black Ferns XV one. So we're not sending them the Black Ferns 15s proper, but we are sending them development. Doesn't that speak volumes about where they see our role?
Yeah, and that I was just about to say that. I've read it down. Like, to me, they're pitching under 18s, some of those other things you just rattled off. That's not the Black Ferns. That's everything underneath the Black Ferns. So when I hear that, it screams out to me that they see every female coach out there that has aspirations to be a high performance coach. they're not ready for Black Ferns. Their view is they're not ready for Black Ferns, but they are ready for all these other ones underneath. I won't say little because they are still important in the journey. But that comms there tells me, whatever female coaches are out there in New Zealand, they're only ready for this level here. XV, development, under 18s, they're not ready for they're not ready for the Black Ferns. However, when you look at the coaching experience, right, and I don't want to have a go at Ricky Flutie because obviously an amazing rugby player. I don't know him personally, so I don't want to shine a light on him. And he's, I hope he does an amazing job. But when you look at his coaching experience, he finished playing some time back, and he's been a Māori All Black and played for the British and Irish Lions. So obviously was a great rugby player. He then started coaching, I think, in 2019 with the Highlanders as an assistant coach. And aside from that, he's done the Columba College First 15 and Sevens, Otago Women's Development. So that's the development team for the Otago Spirit play in the second division of our Wharapama Cup, and some uni prems. Now, I look at that and I go, okay, that's very similar coaching CV as Carla Hohepa, as an example. Carla Hohepa finished her playing career and coached FPC, which her team, being one of the top 4 contenders in FPC over the numerous years, would be a higher level than Otago Women's Development, I would argue, right? She's had 2 seasons with Super Rugby Opaki, which would be the equivalent of the Highlanders assistant coach role. So par for par, person for person, exactly the same CV, right? But what? She's female?
And the other part that, hello, if we're just talking about assembling, without going into a whole other thing, but the whole reason why diversity and inclusion matters is because you need a diverse view of this stuff, right? And so when you're looking at a balance of your team that you're assembling, if you've got 5 blokes there, you've got 5 men looking at women's rugby, where is the women's rugby perspective on the coaching there? Because what Carla can tell you, having been and won a World Cup herself, two World Cups, was the top try scorer at 2010, equal with Heather Mosey from Canada. Has not only got the coaching experience, but the direct playing experience against the women that we will be up against. That's not only has all of her coaching experience directly in our game, all of her playing experience is too. And that has got to count for something, as well as just women to women, what we can know, what we will pick up on, what we will keep eyes on throughout all of this. There is things that we have because these are ours. This is us. We don't have to learn. You hear the blokes when they come into the women's space, even the good ones. They'll all tell you eventually, I had to learn, women are like this and men are like this, blah, blah, blah. They tell you that shit all the time and it's deeply patronising. It's like you should have learned that before you got given a Black Ferns coaching gig. Yeah, anyway.
100%. Yes. So, for our listeners out there, you would be able to sense our frustration. It's not a personal attack on individuals, but it is a microscope lens over the system, which is, well, at the moment, we just can't see the strategic vision and how we actually plan to grow our female high performance coaches. And I know a lot of, we know a lot, those 10 women that we reached out to, some of them are doing some amazing things and they are hunting for their own opportunities. And I know that some of them have even said they feel supported at some degree in their development. But I do think that there needs to be a voice that advocates for them. And so that's why we're here sort of sharing our insights about what we've gained and gathered.
And hey, everyone, sorry about that. I just lost internet there for a second and it caused me to have an absolute heart attack because I knew that Les was making a hell of a point and I was paranoid that we'd just lost all of that conversation. Someone outside had cut the cable and thought, no, keep quiet.
Yes, but we are back and I've had a jersey change because it just got cold. Pregnant mama had some noodles in the time between, but Yes, no, we're back on.
Okay. So I think in terms of where we were at and we were really getting soapboxy there. God, we were getting gorgeous. But I think the key thing that we want to take away with all of this, Les, there's a couple of things that's like, look, we're clearly having a go at this because what we have a very clear vision of where it is we want to be. And so it's around making sure that our system is in alignment with where we have our aspirations for our sport. Because my aspiration for women's rugby in Aotearoa is that it's led by us, it's designed for and by us, and delivered for and by us. Like, that's not to say that men don't have a role. They absolutely do. But that role is stand beside and get in behind. You don't have to be at the front anymore. We can do this ourselves. We can be empowering us to do that. You know, I was saying to you as we were making sure everything was uploading, I've seen this most beautifully in my own community with Ken Laban and the way that he's supported women's coaches. You know, I coached the last couple of seasons at my club team, and when we were having the conversations about that, he said, look, if you don't feel 100, it's fine. That's what your whole team is for. The way that a coaching team comes together is head is one piece, but you've got your assistants there and they should be rock solid to support you to be the best you can be. And so that's the conversation there too. Blokes, we love that you want to give to the women's game, but please make sure that you're not doing that by stepping over the top of a woman that should be stepping in.
Nicely wrapped up. I mean, yeah, probably a good thing that we did have a little bit of an internet cut because things were getting fiery. But yeah, I agree with everything you've just said there. We have the vision. Is that vision being mirrored from those that administer our game? And are we putting the right things in place for our females to succeed in our game? You know, there is a lot of opportunities out there already for men, for male coaches in the males game. And we need to have the same available for our females. We need to get rid of the bias, because naturally when I sort of think back to that point around we're pitching to our female high performance coaches that they are good enough to do New Zealand 18s and age group representative teams, but they're just not good enough yet to do Black Ferns, because that's what when you read through the lines, that's what I'm seeing, that's what I'm hearing. When we're pitching like that, to me, that naturally is saying that we still view male rugby players as being a better coach than a female rugby player. Experience for experience is the same. So we still see males as being better, and male coaches are always going to be better than female coaches. Like, that's the message I'm hearing here, because there's still a bias there. So we need to get rid of that.
And we also need to challenge that within ourselves, because we do see that from time to time reflected within player base and player attitude as well. I know we all get excited, like everybody does. If it's a name that is a big name within the game, you can get starry-eyed about that. But like, the reality is, I think still about the biggest coaches who had influence on my playing career. The two biggest people that probably influenced who I was as a player was my first ever rugby coach, Marama Tauroa, who was my school sports coordinator. She was the one that pulled me in, that taught me how to pass evenly off both hands and connected me to my local club. And the other one is Gaël Mignon, who now coaches France, but who was actually not our coach, but basically ran our scrums when I played over in England. And even though she couldn't speak English at the time, she was learning it on the job as we played together. There was so much I learned from playing alongside her and what she did that taught me, because there were things that she could communicate and how she could do it to me that just immediately related to my experience. There was no lost in translation, even though there was a language barrier. You know, we could just see each other and see what we needed. And I think that's not to say that great male coaches can't do that, but the reality is we can get there quicker if we just support each other to get up there. And we want to keep women in the game. It's not just about playing it. Rugby isn't just about players. It's about managers, it's about coaches, it's about commentators, it's about administrators. And we all have a place in this beautiful game. And if we only limit ourselves to being on it, that's why we have such heartbreak when we retire, when really we should be looking at where's the next place that we can give in, right?
No different, right, to the catchphrase that came out of the Rugby World Cup 2022. You got to see it to be it. It's no different for coaches. Coaches need to see it so they can be it too. Like, and I know I've been a player that has just said, I just want the best coach. I don't care if they're male or female. And I know that a lot of the players now will still feel the same. But take that hat off and just think holistically and think longer term for our female coaches. How are we ever going to know who is the best coach if these female coaches aren't given the same opportunities that our men are? So, yeah, watch this space, hey?
We want to see it. Anyway, shall we talk about our team? Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Just the last part, just a little palate cleanser. We obviously a couple of weeks ago, before the camp was announced and the squad was announced, before Portia was announced of coming out of retirement, we actually had that panel come together and we picked our starting 23. We kind of spitballed around. We said, hey, this is who we reckon is going to play in the first match against Australia coming up. I thought, rather than trying to rehash the whole thing, we'd just go through that, Les, and say, is there any changes we'd make? Now we know everything we know. Now we're working off the same sheet. Is there any changes or tweaks we would make to this lineup? So, yeah, starting with the front row, we had picked Chris Valeko, Georgia Ponsonby, and Vaisinia Mahutariki Whakalelo. Would you make any changes there?
No changes for me.
None from me.
As is.
None from me either. Let's keep it locked in. All right. Maya Ruse and Mama Vaipulu is who we had at the next one. Would we be keeping that the same?
No.
Ooh,
this is where I make this is where I make some changes. And I think people are going to be like, what the heck, Les? But I'll give you my justification. So we know that Maya Ruse is on top of her game right now. You cannot question how good she's playing. To me, she is a starting Black Fern lock World Cup final. That's the caliber of that woman. I already know what I'm going to get from her. And yes, we're going to continue to see growth from her 100%, but I probably need to see something from some of these others. So I'd be starting Dice Faleafaga at lock, and Mama would be, not Mama, alongside Mama. So Dice and Mama, and Maya would be on my bench. No punishment to Maya, just because I need to see Dice Faleafaga.
Interesting, because I think when I had been looking through it, my change had happened on the interchange. So I had I'd taken Alana Bremner off my sheet and I'd popped Dyson there. So I was thinking back end once games are locked up. But you know what? I'm going to take your point there. I'm gonna make the tweak because I think you're right. We don't have long. We want to get max that we can. No disrespect to Australia, but I think that is probably the game to play it. Dice has some familiarity with, Australian rugby. She's played them before, obviously, on the Seven Circuit. So probably a good shout there.
I think just in addition to that too, Alice, knowing that, Australia played Fiji yesterday in a warm-up match for their pick for test match against us that comes next weekend. And they actually had two significant injuries as well with Maya Stewart and Ben Terita, both gone down with what looks like pretty big injuries. I hope they're not, but they look like pretty big injuries. They could potentially be out.
I am, if you're watching this again on the YouTube, I am devastated. What? My favourite, Maya Stewart. Oh God, I feel sick. She was, okay.
Yeah, I was gutted as for Maya, but hopefully it's not as bad as what my little inside scoop's given me. But
oh my gosh, yeah. Okay.
But knowing that's two big strike weapons for the Aussie team, potentially out for next week's test. So to me, it's not their strongest team. I think it's the game that we can see Dice play some big minutes. Okay.
All right, so we'll make that switch in there. Now we'll look at the back three. So we had selected together Leila Sai, Kennedy Tukuafu, and Kaipo Olsen-Baker. Do you want to make any changes there, Les?
No.
Yeah.
No, I was going to stay with that.
I think the reason
I originally had Liana starting, but hey. I got outvoted, so we'll leave that in the last episode.
I think the only thing to note there is if you are looking at that pack forward and you're going, oh, but Alice and Les, what about Georgia? Georgia's not there yet. Okay, she's still with sevens at the moment, so she won't really be released in time to be considered for this one. So we aren't considering her. All right, let's continue then. We've got our 9 and 10 pairing that was picked by the panel, which was Maya Joseph and Hannah King. Do you want to make a change there?
No, I had that unchanged.
All right, gorgeous. What about, I'll go with the midfield first. So what about Ruahei and Amy Duplessis? Is that who you want?
So this, again, New Zealand's not going to be happy with me, but similar to Maya Ruse, we know what Ruahei Demant brings.
Yeah,
we know. She's either going to be our starting 10 or our starting 12. I actually think she's going to be our starting 10. Hannah King needs more game time. We've already talked about that because if something happens to Lou, we need Hannah ready. So that's why Hannah gets the start for me still. But I also need to see how well Teresa Setafano is transitioning in. And Chelsea Semple did raise this last time. I, for some reason, didn't have her in my game day 23 last week because I thought she was still caught up. I think I got the transition from sevens all mixed up, but I've started her at 12. Lou's not even in my game day 23.
Oh, big call.
And not because of Lou. We know that's not performance related.
No,
it is purely just to see people play.
And again, this is not like... You do have to be playing the percentages and the numbers on this too, because when we are playing Pack 4, when we're looking at the matches that we're going to play, we are going to play Aussie again. I would expect that July 12th team is going to look quite different. That's the one that's going to be looking at probably full noise at that point. So the experimentation at the beginning of Pack 4, where you've still got a couple of rounds to pick up if something goes terrible, it makes sense to be making the play at this point. Plus the game the week following against Canada, that's going to be the big one in terms of, I would imagine, targeting. So, yep, makes sense. Okay, what about 13 then? Are you trying, Teresa, with Amy, or are you bringing Stacey in there?
Nah, I'm trying Teresa with Amy. Again, Stacey gets in, a week before this game, or not too far before this game. She's at LA Sevens right now as we speak. So, yeah, no, I'm sticking with du Plessis. Again, we know what Stacey can do. I don't think it's a matter of is she ready or is she capable. We know she is. And everyone else the same as well. So Aish, still the same.
Caitlin, still the same.
And Sorensen.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sorensen McGee.
Okay. So... All right, then. What about our bench? If we're looking at, we had number 16 was Atlanta Lolo here. Are you making the change there for Vicky Rose Green?
No, I'm not. Okay. And I guess because, if I'm being honest, I'm probably one. I said earlier in the pod that Luca Connor's omission from this squad was a surprise for me. So, yes, I think Lolo here, Tanjim Wainuhu. But I actually changed out Amy Rolfe for Kaluna Valley because we need to see her play. She's played I thought she was still injured, but Chelsea Semple dropped the mic last podcast and said she was good to go with the last 3 rounds of Opaki, so we need to see her play.
Yeah, I'm. That's a good shout there, Les, and I'm comfortable with that one. And I think I'm in agreement with you there. We now know she's available. We know that she can do it. We can put her on there. I also think Tan's, like, if we're again talking just like team profile, she's going to have a lot of fun against the Aussies. Like, that's a team that I whereas like Amy Rule, I probably prefer to have her on a bench against Canada or in the mix against Canada anyway, because I need to have someone that's going to be able to do like less of the explosive stuff and more of just the lock it down. So, that's also the player profiling, team profiling you get into. Okay. If we have, otherwise on the bench we had, in terms of other forward interchange, we had Alana Bremner and Liana Michele. Are you keeping those the same?
So Liana Michele too, yes, is still in there. Alana Bremner is out of my game day 23, and Maya Ruse has taken that position now that she's been moved to the bench in my team. So yeah,
I'm in agreement with you again on that, Les. I think it makes sense. Again, we know what Lance can do, and I would expect her to be in the mix in that next round instead. Okay, here's the question: Iritana Hohaia, is she the one on the bench?
Not for me.
Yeah.
I sort of visualise that Reece Pody Lane will become the starting 9 at the back end of this year. I, again, need to see her play though. So I've given her the nod in my game day 23 over Iritana.
I did as well, and I'm envisioning that probably it's going to be the back 20. So I would imagine, by the 55th minute, we'll see her standing on the sideline with her boarding pass, looking to make her debut for the 15s team. So yeah, I would imagine they need to have as max time for her, particularly like the pivot. It's a big ask. This is
spine position,
so you kind of got to sink or swim immediately with her now. Like, it's got to be baptism of fire. Like, are you going to be able to transition across? Because if you can't in these next couple, we can't take you to the World Cup.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, right? I also think that she could be a potential 15, and I wonder if they're actually looking at her. Like, the fact that Renee Holmes isn't on this tour makes me think that they have got someone else targeted for 15, like someone who can cover 15. Obviously, there's Merirangi Paul, but I wonder too if Pody Lane becomes a 9-15 option.
Do you switch Sylvia Brunt for Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe? Because I did.
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I had Portia on my bench in Jersey 22.
Who is she coming on for you?
Well, far out. Oh, goodness. I think it's for Vahakolo.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think it is. I mean, Aisha's just in unreal form.
Yeah.
I still think that Vahakolo wasn't quite hitting her full stride than as what we've seen in previous years. And Merirangi can cover midfield and fullback. I've still got Merirangi as my number
same.
23. Yeah, so I think I like Portia on the wing.
You know what? I'm different though. I'm putting her as cover for Amy, because I want to see her play. I want to see her play again back 20. I want to see, can she play 13 on the world stage? We've just seen, obviously, Alona Ma had a run with the US team. I'm still not sold on her as a centre on world stage. Just because, like, I understand, like, listening to their head coach, Sione, he was talking about how they want to basically get the ball in her hands as much as possible. But I just wonder, in terms of if you're looking at profiling of teams they're going to be up against, particularly at World Cup, USA, then you're playing England, they're going to be playing Australia with G. Fred, who's in great form at 13. Like, these are players that are going to be all over her, particularly in the defensive read. And so I just wonder if she's not just better unleashed on the wing. But with Portia, I think we need to do that same test. We need to go, okay, you've done bloody fantastic transitioning in Opiki. Can this translate onto world stage?
Yeah. I hear your point, and yeah, definitely, this would be a game to give her a go at international centre. So, yeah, I think I'm biased towards her being still one of the greatest wingers, you know. So I still just see her as a winger, but they are considering her as a wing centre, so it makes sense for her to get some international game time at centre. Yeah, I like that.
All right, gorgeous. So we've made a couple of changes, and I will make sure that we share this as well. That's our best guess. Let's see how close we are, because the team list should probably be out, I think, on Thursday. So we will make sure to put this up before then so we can compare and contrast and go, Alice and Liz, you didn't know what the heck you were talking about.
You know what, though? I'm excited to hear what some of our listeners, what they think. Like, of these 32 women that are on this Pac 4 tour for game 1 against Australia, like, let's take in the full picture now. You've got some insight around Australia and a couple of injuries. Who are your game day 23? Who is your game day 23? What does it look like? Who's covering what? Like, let's hear some feedback from our listeners.
Absolutely. All right, gorgeous. Another week in women's rugby and so much news. We'll see how much more comes out this week. But thank you so much, Liz. It's been a pleasure as always.
As always, Alice. That week was lovely, but it's good to see you again on the potty visuals.
Oh, yeah, we can't spend too much time apart. All right, we'll see you next week, team.
Ka kite.